certainly has been a wild last few days, a crazy week altogether. Just a couple days ago, I believe it was the other day actually, we had a huge scare for a lot of Chinese corporations that operate in the United States and have ownership of many American companies, including Activision Blizzard, Epic Games, and Riot Games. The huge scare was that the current United States administration was going to start cracking down on Chinese tech companies, and that appears to be the case right now with some other Chinese social media stuff like WeChat and TikTok. I'm sure you've already heard about that. But right now it does seem like the video games may be the next step. We're going to dive into that story a little bit further later in this video, but I wanted to start this video with some Fall Guys gameplay just because it's such a fun, different type of experience. Just a relaxing game, if I had to say so myself. There is some major server issues right now, but it's a different type of battle royale experience, if you even want to call it that. It's got knockout stages, and it's kind of like modeled after that TV show Wipeout, if you remember that. And it's a fun time. And also, I think I just wanted an excuse to talk about Fall Guys and include some gameplay from it. But as I alluded to at the beginning, there's been a lot going on in this video game industry. Not all of it's been very positive. Of course, we did find out that the next episode of the Night City Wire event series for Cyberpunk 2077 is coming Monday. I will be live streaming that, so expect that. But yeah, there's a lot of negative things going on in this video game industry. We're going to be talking about concerns being raised surrounding Halo Infinite and Marvel's Avengers. And we're not talking about the Spider-Man situation, really. We're talking about the actual quality of Marvel's Avengers, which I'm hearing a lot of comparisons, unfortunately, to Anthem, and it's a major red flag. We're going to go into some previews and my own personal impressions from the beta, which I have played. In addition to that, we actually will be discussing Anthem as it has finally received a new update from BioWare, although a lot of people are pointing out that this update makes clear that BioWare may just be taking notes and copying a lot of the other looter shooters in this genre, especially Bungie's Destiny, which if you're expecting some drastically different experience, it doesn't seem like Anthem is going down that road, which is a little bit disappointing. But other than that, we also have the usual suspects in this video game industry under fire. Blizzard employees are protesting, and Electronic Arts is being shamed for some new dirty monetization, which is something that's already pretty popular in mobile games, and that is in-game advertisements. And they're angling to now push this into console gaming, which again, this monetization nonsense will never end. These companies, especially EA, Take-Two, Activision Blizzard, are always angling for new monetization opportunities, and in-game advertisement seems to be the latest example of just that. But as usual, before we proceed forward, if you do go on to enjoy this content and want to show your support for videos like this, please consider hitting that like button, subscribing for more, and turning notifications on so you do not miss out on any new content. Also, if you don't already know, I am on Patreon, and if you want to help or back this channel further with financial support and gain some benefits, like deciding certain upcoming content, there's actually a poll up right now. Become a patron today. There are links down in the description below if you are interested. Nonetheless, I actually really want to start off with this Electronic Arts story because this is something that has potential huge ramifications on the future of this video game industry. Monetization is never going to stop. These opportunities are always going to keep coming up, and that's why consumers, players, they have to speak out against this, or this all becomes normalized, like loot boxes and so many other monetization schemes have already became. So this is a story coming, I believe, from the Wall Street Journal. And the piece begins saying marketers are putting TV ads in video games played on consoles, an experiment in trying to reach younger audiences who are watching ever less traditional television. In May, for instance, the Turner unit of AT&T's Warner Media ran 3 ad tests within UFC 3, a fighting game from Electronic Arts. The ads promoted Turner properties including Rick and Morty, Snowpiercer, and The Match, a celebrity golf tournament played by Tiger Woods. You know that. There was also Experian PLC, the credit reporting company this month, started a test within UFC 3. Now, moving along, it is now said that these in-game ads, like how it works in mobile titles, in exchange for watching the 15 or 30-second commercials, which is optional, players don't have to watch them. Gamers receive points or other rewards they can use for in-game benefits. That makes the ads less intrusive, said Dave Morgan, chief executive and founder of Simul Media, and that's a flat-out lie, because the thing is, once you start putting microtransactions or any monetization scheme into it, developers start modeling or designing their games around that. And that's the huge concern with something like this. Mobile titles are just like that. That's why I hate mobile titles. That's why a lot of console gamers or PC gamers do not respect the mobile gaming market. That's something that Electronic Arts and many of the other AAA video game publishers want consumers and players to do. They want them to respect mobile games because they want these monetization opportunities in console games. So there is an importance to fight back against this. But let's get back to this story. I'll add my thoughts as we get through this. EA Sports, which publishes UFC 3, is on board with the tests, and Electronic Arts spokeswoman declined to comment. Of course they did. They don't want to talk about this. They want to silently put this into the games, and hopefully nobody says anything. Simul Media is in talks with other console game makers about running similar tests, Mr. Morgan said, adding that game owners will get most of the ad revenue, and this is really concerning that this seems to be something that is just the beginning. Now it continues, it says that hardcore gamers, if they are used to paying $60 plus for a video game, they may not feel aligned with an ad-supported experience. You don't say? That was words coming from John Freyling-Hewson, managing director of consulting firm Lek Consulting, which has researched the subject of ads in games. And he continues saying, but as you move down to mid-core or casual level gamers, playing free games or games on subscription services, we think the market is much more ready for that. And then finally, there's this final quote that's mentioned in this article. The most fundamental piece is we have to create an ad experience that gamers accept, Mr. Morgan said. Maybe they won't love it, but at least they can say, yeah, for a couple of points or Battle Shield, I'll watch the ad. And oh, my head hurts just hearing that quote. These people, they do not understand the video games, and they also do not understand what makes gamers upset. And that exact quote is going to get a lot of people peeved off, because this is the problem with this video game industry right now. Monetization seems to be taking over, and the traditional AAA experiences that so many fell in love with in the early 2000s are going away, and what we're getting nowadays is just games with full of live service nonsense, and sometimes it's just good to have a 15 to 25 hour experience, no advertisements, no monetization, no microtransactions, and it's just a straight up single player multiplayer experience. And for the most part, that doesn't really exist anymore. Every once in a while you'll have something like that, but it's becoming more and more rare. I also should mention that in this story it was mentioned that Simul Media has hired Dave Madden, formerly head of in-game advertising and brand partnerships for Electronic Arts, and that individual is leading Simul Media, or whatever they're called, foray into console gaming. And I'll end this story just saying that I hope people push back against this whenever it happens. We've already seen this happen before. I believe it was actually the NBA 2K franchise which experimented with this, and it seems like this is the future. We're going to continue to see more stuff like this, and it really is on gamers and people, consumers, players pushing back and telling developers that this is not okay. We already missed out on that opportunity so many times in the past with other monetization schemes, I'll call it that, especially loot boxes, but I really hope that in-game advertisements steers away from console and PC gaming. And when I say developers, I should emphasize what I'm really meaning, and that is the publishers and executives that are truly making these business decisions. Because a lot of developers, we're already seeing it, that they are not in support of something like this. Like we have this example coming from Cory Barlog, the game director for God of War, and he said on Twitter, as a consumer, I am so very not into the idea of being served ads in a game I have paid full price for. And I really could not agree more with this statement. I think this sums up everybody's thoughts about this subject. But moving along, let's now discuss what I consider probably one of the more serious matters within this video, and that is the Trump administration going after Chinese tech companies. It's been reported that Trump has signed an executive order which will ban TikTok in 45 days and also Tencent's WeChat. If you were on Twitter or any form of social media the other night, there was a lot of concerns brewing that this could include a lot of the other properties that Tencent owns. And if you don't know, Tencent owns a lot of video game companies, a lot of companies that you may actually like or dislike, but it has been said that Riot Games is owned 100% by Tencent, Supercell 84%, Epic Games 40%, Blizzard, I believe it's somewhere around 5%, Ubisoft 5%, and then there's dozens of other developers with some sort of Tencent involvement, like the developer behind Call of Duty Mobile. Tencent owns the developer. So yeah, Activision Blizzard and a lot of these other AAA video game companies that operate in America but have ownership stakes from Tencent, they have a lot to lose if Tencent starts getting ridiculed or gets banned in the United States by the current administration in the United States. But It has been said that the United States government was not actually targeting Tencent's other properties right now, they're just going after WeChat. But the interesting thing is the actual executive order, it was worded vaguely, and I personally feel like that may be on purpose. And I feel like this may be an angle for something to come in the future. Like, it was actually just a number of months ago in which a lot of people were raising the red flags or concerns about Valorant security and where the data was actually going. So this is not something that's new, and I really do think that this may be something that's a bigger issue raised in the future. And actually looking at the wording of this executive order, this is what it specifically says. The following actions shall be prohibited beginning 45 days after the date of this order, to the extent permitted under applicable law. Any transaction that is related to WeChat by any person or with respect to any property subject to the jurisdiction of the United States with Tencent Holdings or any subsidiary of that entity as identified by the Secretary of Commerce under Section 1 of this order. But the point is, this executive order was very vague. A lot of people thought that the subsidiaries, the other companies that are under Tencent, could be impacted. That does not appear to be the case right now. That's been confirmed by a White House official that talked to the LA Times, but I definitely feel like the vagueness is on purpose, and I guess depending on what happens this November, this could be something that becomes a bigger issue in the years to come. And I mean, Tencent controls this video game industry. They are the video game giant. I think a lot of people get mistaken about Activision Blizzard, EA, Take-Two. No. Tencent is the big dog, and China's power with tech is becoming an increasing issue, and I think you're going to continue to see maybe future administrations cracking down on this in the future, and that may actually be coming sooner than a lot of people expected, because right now, this Tencent move was pretty surprising. And the effects are already being felt as Tencent lost immediately billions in stock value, and Activision Blizzard even lost about 5%. Remember, as I said before, Tencent owns about 5% in Activision Blizzard, and they also are the developer behind Call of Duty Mobile. If Tencent goes down, or there's some serious bannings in the United States for Tencent, that means some huge bad news for Activision Blizzard, and some pretty big financial trouble. But since we are on the subject of Activision Blizzard right now, let's move to the big story that's been erupting this week, and that is employees protesting Activision Blizzard CEO Bobby Kotick, who is making about $40 million this year, and has constantly been described as one of the most overpaid CEOs in the world. Not just this video game industry, the world. And earlier this year, shareholders fought back against his pay, saying that it was outrageous that the company keeps breaking records and they're still firing hundreds of employees, and yet Bobby Kotick's pay doesn't seem to be affected, or any of the executives at Activision Blizzard. But this story right now is coming from Bloomberg, Jason Schreier, and he reports that many employees are coming together showing how little they're being paid, and employees are sharing accounts that they've been forced to skip meals and not being able to pay rent because of how little they're being paid compared to competitors like Riot Games. There was one employee that publicly shared what they were being paid compared to other companies: a Blizzard internship at $16.75 an hour, a Blizzard associate PM $59,000 a year, Blizzard PM $74,000 a year, and then a Riot PM $134,000, Riot PM2 $163,000. Again, this should be mentioned that if you love Blizzard, or if you love Activision, or any of these companies or developers, you gotta understand that these companies paying so little to talented developers, they're going to leave the company, and that is the big issue here. So even if you're thinking, oh, who cares, they could just go somewhere else, well, if you love Diablo, if you love World of Warcraft, these games are going to continue to have problems like we saw earlier this year, especially when talented developers depart from the company. We've been seeing that for a while now. Blizzard is not the same company, and it's because of Activision Blizzard coming in and changing the whole company up. And especially since all the founders, Mike Morhaime, are no longer at the company, the leadership is gone for a reason. It's because of Activision Blizzard's horrendous intervention and influence on what the company is now. But Bloomberg reports that Blizzard employees said they were struggling to make ends meet while watching Activision Blizzard revenue grow year after year. Some producers and engineers at Blizzard can make well over $100,000 a year, but others, such as video game testers and customer service representatives, are often paid minimum wage or close to it. Blizzard Entertainment has traditionally remained autonomous from its parent company, but in recent years, Activision's corporate office has pushed the game development studio to cut costs. Last year, the company eliminated hundreds of jobs, 800 I believe to be exact, and asked some of the remaining staff to take on the responsibilities of those who were let go. One veteran Blizzard employee told Bloomberg News that they received a raise of less than 50 cents an hour. They're making less now than they did almost a decade ago because they are working fewer overtime hours than they did back then. Several former Blizzard employees said they only received significant pay increases after leaving for other companies such as nearby rival Riot Games in LA. And then a few days later, Jason Schreier again, this time on social media, reported Blizzard staff are now compiling a list of workplace requests for management including equal pay, fair promotions, and living wages for QA. The US games industry has no unions. This is one of the largest collective labor actions in games to date. And Bloomberg has reviewed a draft of the list which also asked Blizzard to create a strategy for staff retention. Lots of Blizzard employees have exited for neighboring companies, as I said before, such as Riot Games. Our mentors are leaving in droves, the list says. And yeah, like I said before, the Blizzard that so many fell in love with in the 90s, 2000s, they are no more. This is Activision Blizzard's company now. This is the company run by Bobby Kotick, the greedy CEO who doesn't care about really anything except for his wallet. And if you're expecting this quality and care that you saw 10 years ago or 20 years ago, that's no more. And that's what's scary about Blizzard nowadays, and we've already seen all the controversies that have happened the last couple of years. They're going to continue to happen because of Activision Blizzard's influence on what Blizzard is now. And they're changing this company, and a lot of people are leaving, and this is not going to change anytime soon. And it's very concerning for the future of this company and the creativity that so many fell in love with. But next, let's get to our next story, and this is Marvel's Avengers, a game that really has not been on my radar up until now. There's been a lot of hype and excitement for this game. I mean, the name alone is going to sell this game. It's going to sell millions of copies, and I really don't know how I feel about Marvel's Avengers. The previews coming out are very concerning. My own impressions of it, I'm not really impressed with what Crystal Dynamics has put together. I'm very intrigued with where the story may go, but as a live service and a looter shooter, this has a lot of problems that we had last year with BioWare's Anthem, which we're actually going to be talking about in just a little bit. So I know there's a lot of frustration coming from the Xbox and PC community over the fact that Spider-Man will be coming to Marvel's Avengers, but only for PlayStation 4 owners. I'm actually kind of exhausted by this subject. I've said it before, I just do not like exclusivity like this. I find it anti-consumer. I did not like it when Microsoft was doing it 10 years ago, and I don't like it now. I don't like it when any company does any of this nonsense, and I really don't know how it's actually going to work in the game. Is there not going to be any story content with Spider-Man, or is this just something that Xbox and PC gamers are completely going to miss out on? There's a lot of questions in regards to that, but the exclusivity goes much further than just Spider-Man. It's been revealed by PlayStation. I believe they have like a PlayStation Advantage video up right now. I find that title kind of funny, but it said that PlayStation 4 players will also exclusively get special in-game events, rewards, and 30 days early access for certain cosmetics for all heroes. There's going to be a series of community challenges just for PlayStation players. There's also going to be perks for PlayStation Plus subscribers. They will receive a free bundle containing a rare outfit, nameplate, and 100 credits with the arrival of each new post-launch hero, starting with Hawkeye. They'll also receive a special Miss Marvel bundle on launch day. So if you're PlayStation 4 player, you're getting the full experience. If you're an Xbox or PC gamer, unfortunately you are not. But what I'm really focused on right now, and my major concern, is actually the quality of the game. Because I've played the game and I've seen a lot of the previews, and I've heard from a lot of people that I actually like to hear their thoughts on games like SkillUp and a friend of mine, Mr. Matty Plays, and a lot of them are not too hot on this experience. And personally, I don't find it very fun. Marvel's Avengers is a title that reminds me very much of Anthem, although I will say that the story content, at least from what I just played of, just the 3 story missions that are available, they're far more intriguing than any bit of Anthem. The characters feel a lot better, but beyond that, the combat, the gameplay is just a little too repetitive, and the loot I just don't care for, which is kind of a big problem with a looter shooter, kind of the same problem that I had with Anthem. So any looter shooter, one of the things that developers have to nail is gear. They have to look and they have to feel good. The best examples of games that have done this is Borderlands and Destiny. At least those are the games that come to my mind when I think of a good looter shooter. Now, the thing is with Marvel's Avengers, because they want to sell microtransactions with cosmetics, gear doesn't really have an appearance. And what that means is, why is anybody going to stick around after the game finishes up? So I really don't understand. I'm hoping that this is just a mistake, but I'm pretty sure it is intentional that gear doesn't have an appearance. And what that means is you're pretty much just upgrading your character, but you're not seeing any differences, which that is going to be a major problem, which goes back to one of my key issues with the game, that it's trying to be too many things. Like from the get-go, I always felt that a Marvel's Avengers game would have been far suited for just a single player experience, not this giant live service looter shooter nonsense. But I get it, they're trying to make as much money as possible, but that kind of is the key problem here. It really didn't, and it shouldn't have been that. So as you can tell, I'm not very impressed with this experience. I find the combat far too repetitive. Some of the heroes and some of their abilities are really cool, but it kind of gets old fast. Like, I loved Miss Marvel, I love her fanboy attitude, that's what actually has me intrigued with the story, but once you get to that third story mission, you have an open level, you can explore a little bit, but there's nothing really to explore, there's no reason to explore. The only draw that I personally noticed was the ability to battle against some other enemy squads that are scattered about throughout the open level, and then there's of course different types of hidden chests that are scattered about the map that you can find with gear that you can upgrade your character. But beyond that, that seems to be about it. Of course, there's some puzzles with some of the war table missions, which are decent, but what I was hoping for was something a little bit more inspired, maybe something more akin to Gears 5 or God of War, which have these open levels which include some story content, some side quests, but you don't see any of that. I guess what I was looking for was more variety, but I'm not the only one sharing these concerns. There's a lot of other outlets which sound, I wouldn't say negative, but there's a lot of red flags that are being raised. We have Game Informer, which says, unfortunately, I cannot escape a sense of plodding sameness and tedium at the center of the action. Avengers frequently reminds me of the brawling comic book movie games of the late 2000s, in which button-mashy battles, canned animations, and too often repeated quips failed to elicit laughter or engagement. Even when enemies sometimes do respond to my punches, I usually feel like the battles are simply a matter of me moving from one bad guy to the next, tapping wildly on the attack buttons as I watch a health bar deplete. Recent years have given us the melee combat systems of games like God of War and Spider-Man, and by comparison, Avengers often feels archaic. And then further down, Game Informer writes, I am deeply worried about the long-term engagement that such gear provides. In other living games like this, such as The Division or Destiny, the focus on distinct weapons and armor that fundamentally change your playstyle is a big part of the appeal to continue playing. I don't see any indication of that approach in Avengers. VG247 writes, as with Anthem, in the run-up to that game's release, I yo-yoed back and forth. Some elements were absolutely incredible, and sometimes the game genuinely wowed. But at the same time, it seemed like a game that was running the risk of being less than the sum of its parts. As we zeroed in on its release, it felt like Anthem could go either way, and we all know which way it went. Nothing of Avengers I've played so far suggests it's particularly overeager to stick around beyond enjoying its narrative, so like Anthem pre-launch, Marvel's Avengers feels like it could go either way. Forbes' Paul Tassi, who is pretty big on the looter shooters, also gave his thoughts, and he said he considered the worst aspect of the beta and something that has him concerned about the final game is how copy and pasted so much of it felt. IGN also was very critical of this. They said that Marvel's Avengers seems to be trying a little too hard to please everyone. It's both a set-piece driven, action-packed, explosive, single-player adventure while also balancing an intrinsically tied cooperative mode with a complex loot system at its core. They also bring up one of the bigger issues, what happens when a DLC character is released and everyone wants to try them out at the same time, as you cannot actually double up on heroes. And IGN also says that Marvel's Avengers' most glaring issue, at least during the beta, is its gear system. The real draw to get people to grind these endless war zones is the chance to loot something great, and so far, I have not cared about a single thing that's dropped for me. And then they finish off saying that, while live service games often come with the adage of it's not how they launch, it's what they become, I hate that quote, Todd Howard, worried that there's currently very little that would keep my interest to play past the campaign. And I really do not like that quote with these live service games. Todd Howard's the one who said that, and it's something that keeps being used with all these live service dumpster fires. Do I think Marvel's Avengers is going to be a dumpster fire like Ghost Recon Breakpoint, Anthem, Fallout 76, and so many other examples? No, but I do think that this game is going to have, I would assume, a very mixed reception. I think a lot of Marvel fans will be satisfied with what this game is, the more casual audience, but a lot of hardcore gamers, somebody looking for something a little different than the usual looter shooter, I don't think that this is going to be that, at least based on what what I've played at the beta, and what's been presented in gameplay for the last couple of years. But next we move on to the game that I just mentioned a couple of times, and that is BioWare's Anthem. You may have forgotten this, but the game is still trying to make a comeback, and 1 year later, a small team at BioWare Austin is developing Anthem Next, or Anthem 2.0, and what they shared the other day was loot and equipment goals for Anthem. They showed off some new gameplay screenshots and a short snippet of gameplay showing off the new loot system and also some concept art. The only problem is that there's still no release date, no roadmap for when to expect any of this. I would say sometime in 2021, maybe around the 2-year anniversary of Anthem's launch. That makes a lot of sense. But what we have here is a reveal that Anthem's loot is pretty much copying what other looter shooters like Destiny 2 have done long ago. And this comparison to Bungie's Destiny 2 is not something that's new. This is actually a question that BioWare's lead producer Michael Gamble actually tackled before Anthem's launch. And he responded saying it's interesting because Anthem had been in development since before Destiny even came out. Gamble goes on to say that games these days are influenced by the games out in the market to a certain degree, although it does look like, based on the user interface of the loot system now for Anthem, it looks very, very much just like Destiny 2. But going to this article from CCN, they discuss the situation. They say Anthem disaster unravels further after Destiny 2 loot system ripoff. Anthem is a disaster, this much is apparent to most, but developer BioWare is attempting to pull a No Man's Sky, and if they really want to do that, the game is going to have to go to free-to-play, and maybe not even include microtransactions, something that I don't think Electronic Arts will be committed to, but we'll have to see. But for right now, there's just zero hype, nobody's even talking about Anthem. Getting back to this CCN piece, it continues saying Anthem's new approach plans to increase the frequency of loot drops, provide more viable loot, and ensure that all types of loot can be valuable to someone. The game is also adding specific loot rewards for completing quests while random drops still apply. Targeting quest loot is a valuable approach. They're also introducing item level ups, ensuring players can bring with their favorite loot as they rise in the ranks. Unfortunately for Anthem, all of this is possible in Destiny 2 and many other looter shooters. While the post states that BioWare took a long look at its competitors, it reveals a blatant copy of Bungie's big title. And trying to save itself, Anthem is imitating Destiny 2 rather than taking its own unique approach to the looter shooter. Is that what players want? And at this point, I think a lot in the community that still remain are going to be happy with anything, and this is probably more than satisfactory. But if BioWare is trying to attract and bring in new players, I'm not sure this accomplishes that. And going to Forbes' article coming from Paul Tassi, he also made the point about all of this stuff being pretty much possible in other looter shooters, that Anthem is still playing catch up. While what is listed all sounds like promising improvements to the current system, it shows just how much Anthem is playing catch-up with a half-dozen other games in the genre that have already been doing a lot of this stuff for years. Not to mention, this is not some imminent patch, but a far-off reboot with no actual timeline and little more than concept art to show these promised changes right now. Tassi would further say, look, don't get me all wrong, all these changes are good, but they are things that almost every other looter shooter or ARPG have figured out years and years ago. And it's wild Anthem launched without basic things like view and equip loot right after you get it, or it's just discovering concepts like rerolls or poaching treasure goblins. And again, I just worry about how much weight is being put on BioWare Austin here, which is not a huge studio. I'm sure they're doing their best, but a total rework of Anthem sounds like a massive undertaking. This was announced last year, and here we are in August and still just seeing Photoshop mockups and concept art. That's somewhat disconcerting. And yeah, I really don't know if Anthem has a future. I've been saying this for a while right now. It's still a dead game, and it's going to remain that way until maybe February 2021, but it's been a while, and these updates, while they are encouraging, it's nothing that's really impressive, and I don't really know if Anthem as a franchise is going to exist beyond 2021 or 2022, but I am encouraged by the fact that BioWare is still working on this and Electronic Arts is allowing them to do so, but I just don't know there's going to be a player base that's going to be returning or even investing time whenever Anthem 2.0 comes to be. Now we finally move on to the last subject of the day. This is another long video, but there's been a lot of discussion about Halo Infinite. After that gameplay reveal during the Xbox Game Showcase, there's been a lot of discussion about if this game is ready or if there's been some problems happening behind the scenes. And this is actually not something that's new. We've been hearing rumors that Halo Infinite's development at 343 has not been going well. Jason Schreier talked about this earlier this year. He said on the Reset Era Gaming forums, I have heard from multiple people that Halo Infinite has had a a long and rocky development cycle. Of course, all of 343's Halo games have had long and rocky development cycles. They continued saying, it'll be curious to see if Halo actually makes it. On one hand, console launch games cannot get delayed. On the other hand, games that lose their creative directors midway through development aren't exactly going through the most stable productions. So this does not mean that Halo Infinite is going to be a stinky bad game, but what it does mean is that there's been problems happening behind the scenes. We've seen this over the years with a lot of AAA games, some that turned out to be great, like 2010's Red Dead Redemption. It was infamously in development hell, and there's many more examples I could give. But on the other spectrum, with games, live services that turned out to be disasters, like BioWare's Mass Effect Andromeda and Anthem, there were lead developers leaving mid-development, and they weren't leaving just because they wanted another job position. They were getting away from the mess that they knew was coming. But with Halo Infinite, these are some of the 343 industry developers that have left since Halo 5. Che Cho, studio producer, left in September 2016. Morgan Lockhart, narrative designer, left in November 2016. Josh Holmes, executive producer, left in December 2016. Matt McCloskey, 343 Industries chief operating officer, left in early 2017 to join Twitch as vice president of commerce. Dan Ayoub, an executive producer and also studio head for Halo Wars, left in May 2017. He went to go work for another Microsoft department. Chris Haluk, lead campaign designer, left in May 2017. Kazumi Janucci, music supervisor and composer, left in June 2018. Lawrence Metten, multiplayer design lead, left in September 2018. Tim Longo, Halo 5 Guardians and Halo Infinite creative director, left in August 2019. That was actually very recent. And then Halo Infinite's lead producer, Mary Olson, also left 343 Industries in October 2019. 343 Industries has definitely suffered some major departures, and now we have YouTubers like Review Tech USA who's claiming from a source that Halo Infinite has had some development chaos. It's been in development hell, and there's been a lot of attention on company's Glassdoor review page from apparent employees over the years, and there are some very interesting reviews that line up with a lot of the other ones. We have one titled Large Scale Incompetence. I worked at 343 Industries for more than a year, and they have a lot of cons. Absolutely awful build/repo issues, massive awful code base, but that's kind of common for this sort of studio, really heavy use of contractors. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if more than a third of the programmers are hourly, and I assume the ratio for artists/designers is even worse. For every genuinely talented person, there's a dozen vendors or senior programmers that don't know even the basics of tech we're using, and there's zero investment in improving that. Zero accountability as far as I can tell. The same people have been in upper management for ages despite games being poorly received and the studio itself being a mess, and the build is constantly being broken by bad check-ins without any consequences. Another actually more positive review said that there's a lot of tech debt, the engine is old and cumbersome, and so are the workflows. They're working on it, but they're not where they need to be yet. The game they're trying to make is too ambitious for their current time and tools. They've scoped it down a lot, but I still predict a lot of crunch coming up for most folks on the production side around milestones. Things are broken a lot, and there are days when getting work done is a challenge. They're iterating on their process, but it's going to take time. It feels like people leave a lot. With Microsoft's policies on contractors, some revolving door action is expected, but even senior full-time people and directors come and go fairly often. I think they just get burned out. It's not super good for morale. We have another employee who says, soul-crushing grind. They acknowledge some pros, working on some exciting IP with some bright people, looking great on a resume, but the cons are similar to what we've been hearing in these Glassdoor reviews, which does make it seem like this is true. Brutal technical debt, culture of confusing and obscure code names, the absolute opposite of an agile, cutting-edge tech company. Another review says ad hoc catastrophe, and they say that there's, again, tech debt, which is probably better summarized as technical bankruptcy in 343's case, a now decades-old swollen codebase littered with thousands of duct tape fixes, and a development infrastructure so flimsy that it more than frequently hurts productivity than helping it. There were times when the entire studio was unable to check in new code for content for weeks. Another positive review, which came in May, says great addition to the resume, and the cons they noted were disorganized management and timelines, broken development, software delays, production. A more recent review says great place to work for people passionate about Halo, but the cons they noted again, the tools suck bad and are very unstable. Then there are many more reviews bringing up pretty much the same issues. Now I understand the perspective many have, which is that Glassdoor is or can be, well, unreliable. And I actually share that opinion. Sometimes there's also disgruntled ex-employees just venting about their time at a studio. But the thing is, even in many of the positive reviews, which date back to 2018 and 2017, they share detailed accounts of the same problems happening behind the scenes. YouTuber Review Tech USA claims an Xbox Games studio employee who verified the credentials to him reportedly claimed that the vision and scope of Halo Infinite was drastically scaled down with big changes in tech over the years. This source also claimed that 343 Industries has been in development hell, and much of what the Glassdoor reviews say are true. Jason Schreier, one of the only actual reporters in this industry, has already made known that the game's development has been rocky, but he has said he plans to investigate further. So what is clear is all is not well. Where there is smoke, there is fire. That doesn't mean Infinite will be bad, but it does mean trouble has been happening at 343, and until we see more, there's for sure reason to be skeptical about the quality of this Xbox Series X launch title. But anyway, this was another lengthy news video. We discussed a lot of different things. Let me know your thoughts on everything that we talked about down in the comment section below. But thank you for watching. Make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy this video, or if you found any informative value, and make sure to follow my other social media accounts for updates on new videos. Links are always down in the description below. I'm most active on Twitter, giving opinions on news that I do not always get into video form, so do make sure to follow me over there. Also check out my Discord for all sorts of discussion and conversation on games. And again, thank you for joining. Consider subscribing for more videos like this, and I'll see you later.